Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and meteorologist DT from Weather Risk, your commander of chaos, your colonel of confusion, your captain of catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather for this Wednesday evening, April 18th. Now, as I've posted on the Facebook here this evening, there's a whole bunch of incredibly dangerous and very unique tornadic thunderstorms going through central Oklahoma with multiple tornado vortices rotating around each other. Really quite record shattering, unusual stuff you normally don't see unless you're watching a really bad science fiction weather movie. But it's quite amazing here. But in these reports, we don't do severe weather. We look at the weekly and 2 weekly weathers on a large scale. So I'm not going to spend any time talking about the tornadoes. We're doing that over in the Twitter page. We do on the Facebook page. So let's get right to it. First, we'll take a look at some recent conditions here. Let's talk about the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific. Now, right now, we're past La Nina. We're not in the El Nino, but clearly the La Nina is developing, and you can clearly see that. Now, here we have the Australians on the left-hand side, the Climate Prediction Center on the right-hand side. And let me point out a couple of things here. You can see the ENSO reached 1.2. Let me call up a nice good arrow so you can see what I'm talking about. Here we go. And you can see 1.2 region here. So look at it. Look how amazingly warm it is, right? The Australians, and here's CPC. Now the rest of the regions are not quite as near, not over here, are not nearly as warm, but that is where it's developing. Now the reason why that's important is because, as some of those folks have pointed out, when you are the warm temperatures in region 1.2 are, like I said already, plus 2.7 C. This is the earliest and warmest of any El Nino in a year in that region where we saw development of an El Nino. Now, for example, the 1997 El Nino, which lasted from 97 to 98, it reached 2.8 degrees centigrade, but that was in June. See that, of 97. This did it here in April, mid-April. And then also the one in 2015-16, again, reached 2.7 degrees centigrade in region 1.2, but that was in July. Again, this is in April, so it is quite significant. So that leads me to believe that we have a pretty good shot of a very strong El Nino, not moderate, but strong. And let me show you some other data. Okay, so here is the ENSO sub-valley region. So you can see on the left-hand side. Now this is August 17. Now notice how the warm water, this is 150 meters down, something like that. Now this is over in the western Pacific here by the Philippines. Notice how the warm water is coming up into ENSO region 3, ENSO 1.2. This is the Peru right here. You can see that's Peru. Look at the warm water here. 3 degrees centigrade above normal. Now this is April 17th. Now take a look at March 1st. Okay, and you can see here March 1st. Let me bring this forward here for you. You can see March 1st. There we go. It was really quite much colder. Look at the warm water in the upper right. See the difference? And also notice how the warm water is on the image on the right hand side. One from March 1st is restricted to about 150, 200 meters down, only underneath the far western Pacific Ocean. So this is a massive change in the past 46 days. Really quite pronounced. If we look at our sea surface temperature, okay, we can see several features here. Notice the cold water in the eastern Pacific along the west coast of North America, from Alaska to Baja California. And then the warm water in the central Pacific. This is a classic PDO, negative phase of the PDO, the Pacific Decade Oscillation. Right? That's area A. Area B is the developing El Nino off the coast of Peru. You can see how it's exploding off the coast of Peru. And area C is the eastern Atlantic, which is really warm and which has implications for what's going to happen in Europe later on this summer. So typically, again, this is what happens in 2015 and El Nino and the one in 1997. Notice how they all got very, very warm off the coast of Peru in region 1.2. Again, region 1.2 here, this region. You can see how they really got warm, and then it spread westward along the equator. So this is what happens with this. We saw this in the the 82-83 El Nino. Again, developed off the coast of Peru, spread westward along the equator towards the international date line. So this is a classic characteristic of a strong El Nino. Now you also have some moderate ones here, but again, my inclination is, because of the model data, which we'll see in a second, is to think this is going to become a strong El Nino. Now, if let's assume for a second that we didn't have the El Nino. So let's assume we don't have area B, okay? We just had area A and area C. This is a negative PDO. Now the negative PDO, again, this is what it looks like. The cold water here on the left-hand side, there's your cold phase. That's called negative. This is the positive phase when you have the warm water along the west coast of North America. So clearly, as you can see, area A matches this right here on the right-hand side. Okay. And now the reason why it's important going into the summer is because when you have a negative PDO, you often get, let me call it up here so you can see it. You often get very dry conditions in the plains in the Midwest. Very wet here in the Ohio Valley into Pennsylvania. Some dryness in the southeast U.S. This is very similar to a La Nina. Very similar to La Nina. But as you can see, clearly we have the cold water right here. This is a classic PDO. Now, presumably the PDO is going to break down, and you'll see why as we get into the forecast. If perchance we keep the negative PDO in place for the summer when the El Nino is underway, that would counteract the El Nino to some degree. And we would have a more normal hot summer. Because right now, if we have a moderate or strong El Nino, right now, most of the United States is going to see a not a hot summer. I mean, there'll be warm, hot days, obviously, but not looking at prolonged heat waves. And it also looks like a lot of rain. Then we're not going to have any droughts. And of course, it suppresses hurricane activity. But if we keep the negative PDO into July and August, September, which is a big if, that would actually enhance the hurricane season a little bit. It might act as a counter to the El Nino. But like I said, I believe this is going to go away. So, but we'll see. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Okay. Now, here we can see again the different values. This is the latest CFS projections. Now, this is from last week. You can see the image on the left-hand side. This is from last Friday, April 14th. And you can see the dashed lines, okay, getting up to around 2 degrees centigrade by October. Now, the one on the right-hand side was from March 23rd, about 45, 50 days ago. And you can see that it was much, much cooler. Okay, so what's happening is as we're getting closer into the summer, these lines are getting warmer and warmer. See that? So that's an important trend. Here's the Australians. Again, this is as of April 8th. Look at the Australian line here, this left-hand side. Look at this, the green line really taking off. 2.4 degrees centigrade by August. Wow. That is just wow. That is a rocking El Nino. Here's the European model from August 5. Now, the black line here, you see the black line on the right-hand side? Okay. The black line was the March projection, and it had it barely getting to 1 degree centigrade by July and August. Now, the red line has it at 1.8 degrees by August. Huge spike in just 1 month. It'll be really interesting to see on May 5 what the new values are going to be on the Australian and European models. Okay. So that's our little El Nino discussion. Let's talk about what's happening here for the next couple of weeks. Here's the MJO on the left-hand side, European GFS. Notice you follow the red lines, that's the next 5 days. Then you have the blue lines, that's 6 to 10 day, and the purple lines, 11 to 15 day. Notice it's in phase 5, and then a little bit in phase 1, and it goes in the neutral circle. See how it does in all of these? It's mostly in the neutral circle. So phase 8 in April, in terms of precipitation, there's some rain in the dry areas of the plain states, but it's pretty dry east of the Mississippi River as a general rule. And then it's also pretty warm in the plains of the Midwest in phase 8. Now, by the time we get to the weekend, or coming out of the weekend, we'll be in the neutral circle. So El Nino is about to take a nap and go to sleep here for in the week 2 forecast. So, but for the time being, there is some rain showing up in the plain states and temperatures a little on the warm side in the Midwest and the plain states. Not too bad on the East Coast, but that's going to change. Okay, so we can see here recent conditions. Here's the jet stream map from April 14, 15. Remember this big trough here coming in, another one in the Gulf of Alaska. We had this upper low. Remember there was down in the Gulf of Mexico, gave a lot of rain to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Then it moved up into the mid-Atlantic and fell apart. And there was the big ridge where it made it warm and dry for several days all last week. And then you can see the temperatures were really quite warm. And now, of course, the Pacific Northwest and California, the Northern Rockies, underneath the trough, temperatures were below normal. So very, very typical pattern here. No surprises there. Here's the rainfall the past 7 days. Not much on the East Coast, as you can see. A lot of gaps in the coverage. Some decent rains in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, that sort of thing, but not much in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. So a little on the dry side. All right, so in the short term, what's happening is, so let's take a look at it. So we have this big trough. Let me get up a little arrow so we can see what we're talking about here. So there's the big trough coming in, okay? And there's a block pattern developing. Now this is the upper low, which is going to be doing, yeah, which is the upper low, which comes out of, let me see the previous map. Where was it? Yeah, the upper low here. Yeah, this is the trough that was coming in. Okay, so this upper low is now forced northward. This trough comes in the Great Lakes and runs through the blocking pattern. So here it is. Now you can see the upper low moves into eastern Canada, and that causes a block to form right there, right here. So this next trough comes in and it digs down into the plains, into the Rockies here. So for Thursday, what happens is we got this low here in Louisiana. This is actually the system causing the tornadoes right now. It's the beginning of it in Oklahoma. So the low goes up into Missouri, eastern Kansas, Missouri, into Iowa. Very, very warm south of the front here. And then north of the front, New York State, New England is still quite cold. They're not going to get warm tomorrow. The Great Lakes also. But south of the front is quite warm. And southwest winds bringing up the humidity as well. So this trough is the next big system here we have to worry about right here as it comes eastward. So here what happens is, now this is a Friday, so the upper low itself and the trough is now in Minnesota. The trough extends all the way down to Texas and Louisiana. So on the surface map here on the left, you can see this is Friday evening. The cold front at midday Friday is moving through the Ohio Valley down to Arkansas, Louisiana. It's snowing in Minnesota, North Dakota, the southern Canadian prairies, right? And the warm front is trying to push northward. You see how the warm front is trying to go northward here? See that? And drive into Pennsylvania, New York. It's going to probably get into New York and southern New England, but not much more than that. And then finally, the front really explodes here. You can see this is Saturday night, heavy rain, thunderstorms ahead of the warm temperatures on the East Coast. And then the cold air comes roaring in behind it. Let me show you what I mean. So these are the max temperatures. I'm sure you know it's going to get very warm tomorrow on Thursday, when that's duh, and then on Friday. But you can see impressive heat. Now notice New England and New York State, they're still in the 40s and 50s, but mostly 50s. Okay, then south of the front, Pennsylvania's in the 70s, Ohio's in the mid to upper 70s, Indiana, and then once you get south of the Maryland Pennsylvania border, it's you got 85 to 90 on both Thursday and Friday, and down all the way down to Georgia. So it's a lot of warmth coming here ahead of this front. Now here's the front of the GFS. This is the 18Z GFS. So Saturday starts off sunny. Well, or at least dry. Let me change that. Saturday starts off dry on the East Coast. But this front's going to come through during the day from west to east. So, it's not going to stay dry past the afternoon hours. There's going to be a lot of rain, a lot of thunderstorms. It's a pretty strong looking front from North Carolina all the way to Buffalo. And eventually this front will move into New England by Sunday morning. So anticipate a lot of rain Saturday night is what I'm saying to you. Anticipate thunderstorms. Okay. Now, what happens after this? Well, okay, so we know that here's the upper low. Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it. All right. So this upper low right here, okay, right here is going to try and move up against the block. This system's already blocking it. So these systems are going to get stacked up here, and they're not going to go anyplace. So here's the upper level map. Let me call this up here. All right. Notice the upper low is trapped north of the Great Lakes, and you can see the omega block. You see why it's called an omega block? It's shaped like the letter omega. You have a big upper low of the northern Great Lakes, another one in the northwest Atlantic, and that forces omega block to happen, just like the black line shows an omega block. Now, what happens is this next trough coming in from the Pacific Northwest is forced to drop down towards Texas later on in the week. But the front comes through on Monday night and Tuesday. We already have some cold air in place. The front a second reinforcing front arrives, and the temperatures collapse. So this is the temperatures on Sunday. These are min temperatures Sunday morning in the plains of the Midwest. Look at the single digits and teens in Minnesota and the Dakotas, and then a lot of places well below 30 degrees. Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, much of Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, in the low 30s in the Ohio Valley. That's just the beginning of it. Now, that's going to reach the East Coast, there's no doubt about it. So these are the mid temperatures for Monday, April 24th at, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And you can see the Shenandoah Valley is cold enough for another frost. There's no doubt about that. Okay, and so is the Ohio Valley. Look at the temperatures in Indiana and Ohio. If you're planting stuff there, if you got fruit trees coming out early because it was such a warm winter. Look at Michigan. I mean, these temperatures are in the mid 20s. All right. Now, Pennsylvania, New York is not that cold yet, but the cold is coming, and we can see now this is going to be April 25. This is Tuesday morning. Again, look at these temperatures. There's some cold stuff in Pennsylvania, New York State, and in the Shenandoah Valley. Moderate frost here, and then finally, this is April 26th, and again, a low to mid 30s in the Shenandoah Valley, eastern third of West Virginia, western and central Maryland, near 30 in Pennsylvania, New York State. These are all frost potentials. 30s in eastern Kentucky and Ohio. I'm telling you, this has got problems. This is so we have 3 nights to worry about, really, 3 different nights to worry about. So for agricultural concerns, and that's a big deal. I mean, it may not be important to you, but a lot of clients and businesses out there are trying to grow stuff, and this is not really good news. So these kinds of frosts. Okay. In terms of the rainfall for the next 7 days, let me get rid of that. Here it is, the next 7 days. You can see the GFS with the rain coming. Notice it does not have that much rain in North Carolina or Virginia with the cold front. I think that's probably underdone. I think it's going to be more rain in here with the front on Saturday. Meanwhile, a lot of rain here for the deep south. Some of that's going on right now, some of it later on in the week and early next week, but a lot of rain in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas. Okay, now in week 2, all right, so let's take a look at this one step at a time. So here's the here's the map for April 26th. Notice the mega block is still in place. So you remember that system coming down from the Pacific Northwest? Look what it does. It goes down to New Mexico and Texas. All right, it's forced to go underneath the block. See how it's forced to go underneath it, dropping underneath it, and that's going to produce a big rainstorm and a big low pressure area for the plains and delta in the deep south. So this is going to be a big story by this time next week. All right, and then if we take a look at the map here, okay, for April 29th, bring it forward. Here you go. Look at the huge block. It's still in place. Now here we have a split flow pattern developing. You see the flow's coming in from the Pacific, right? And then it splits. Let me show you what I mean here. I'm going to change the color of this thing to every black. So here's the jet stream, right? And the trough is here, and then it splits. You get a big ridge on the west coast. The southern branch is coming in this way, and then you have the jet streams unify again here in the trough. So there's your mega block, shaped like a letter mega. It's not going anywhere, not for the end of April. So you have northwest flow coming down, a deep trough blocked here in the Great Lakes and Mid-Atlantic and New England, pulling the cold air in place. This is a stormy and cold pattern. It's particularly stormy for the southern states, and it's very cold for the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, New England, and the Mid-Atlantic. So there's going to be more. If this is right, we're going to have more frost threats here at the end of April going into May. More frost threats in May. This is a very stubborn pattern. Very interesting. Now here comes a storm coming out of the southwest states. This is April 26th, and then we have April 27th. Now, this is going to be a big deal. A lot of warm air ahead of the system. Again, a potential big severe weather event on April 26th, 27th in the southern states and the Delta. And then the front will come to the east coast with more rain. Here it is, week 2. A lot of rain with this front. This system is going to take a long time getting through. When it does, get significant rain here from Maine to Georgia, 1 to 2 inches. Right? And the temperatures, again, once you get into this pattern, it gets cold. Look at this, the week 2 temperatures. Way below normal for the end of April, beginning of May. 6, 8, 9, 10 degrees below normal. These are in Fahrenheit. Everybody east of the Mississippi River, but even the Midwest, that's really cold going into May. And then finally, we take a look, well, not quite finally, but this is 330 is out. This is May 2nd. And again, remember we talked about the split flow pattern here? Okay, here it is, May 2nd. And again, I drew the arrow in so you can see it. The unified Pacific flow pattern. Then it splits into 2 branches. The southern branch, big trough headed for California, right? That's going to be a big rainmaker. And then the northern branch splits in northwest Canada. And then we can see a big trough here on the east coast. Where was this pattern in January or February? This is screaming snowstorm for the east coast. But of course, it's freaking May, so it's not. But I'm just saying. And then, of course, you can see the blocking is still in place over Greenland and northeastern Canada. So the ridge in the West Canada is bringing down the cold air. So it's cold, everybody east of the Mississippi River. And that trough, when it moves into California, is going to move across the country. That's going to be a big rain producer and a potential significant severe weather event, let's say around May 4, 5, or 6, as it crosses the plains, the Midwest, and heads into the eastern U.S. And then if we look at week 3, nothing's changed. The blocking is still in place, the ridges on the west coast, and so on and so forth. Now, one other point, if we're getting this kind of pattern, we're getting this ridging forming here in northwest Canada and the northern Gulf of Alaska, and and here, this is going to cause the cold water that we talked about here to weaken. So if we get this kind of pattern here in the week 2, that cold water or the negative PDO is going to weaken in off the coast of Alaska and British Columbia. So that's something else to keep in mind. Okay, anyway, that's the presentation. I hope you liked it. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you over on the Twitter page and over on the website and the Facebook page.